Today on Ultra Life Today, welcome to the podcast. We have a special guest with us today. I'd like to tell you a little bit about him. Keith Bishop has a rich history here in Oklahoma City and our state. He talks with people all over the country and the world. He's a retired pharmacist, been a clinical nutritionist with a private practice for 24 years. Keith has a specialty in Alzheimer's and cancer research. Those are, from A to C, those are words that everybody literally fears. Mm-hmm. And Keith is here today to take that capital A and capital C and turn those into a lowercase letter and help you understand there's a path to improvement. There's even a path for prevention. And I'm Josh Bellew.
I'm Adam Payne, the co-host of Ultra Life Today. Keith, this is the second or third time we've interviewed. I think it's the third time.
We've done him on the radio a few times, but we've actually dragged him into the building here twice. Mm-hmm. First time in this studio, though.
I know. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
You have such your life journey, and we're not ashamed to say that I think the journey that God has brought you on in your life has been something that's paralleled some stuff that we've gone into, and it just it gives me so much hope that there are guys that are getting knowledge and inspiration to move forward with novel and complex ways that can really address some underlying issues that people face today. And that sounds really nebulous. Are we going to talk about the C word?
We are going to talk about, yes, we're going to allow Keith to really disclose some of the things he has been doing in that space, what he's been learning, some of the tools that he has and protocols, and we're super excited about it.
He has a blog, his own big thing going on. So
it is.
Keith, tell us about what you're doing.
Well, besides working, at Flourish as a clinical nutritionist and management duties, I'm in my part-time at night, weekends. I do have a website. It's called Prevail Over Cancer.
Oh, wow.
And Instagram and Facebook, and I've not had time to do other things. It's very consuming, and especially the response I've gotten off of these sites. And so I research the food and lifestyle and supplement aspects on cancer and publish what science has to say. We call it evidence-based research information. So I'm sharing that in little tidbits, just trying to help people make little changes. And also have reports that people can download.
Gosh, I'm so grateful, Keith, that you said sharing that in little bitty snippets and bites, because in this space with people's health, they get absolutely overwhelmed.
Right.
They have all this information hit them at once, and they feel like they need to eat the whole apple. And you and I and Adam know what they do. They just throw up their hands and say, I just can't make any changes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about what you would end up doing for someone that comes to you with one of these very serious challenges, such as Alzheimer's or cancer. How do you relate to someone to kind of bring them into your world and then gain their trust so that they can begin to move into something practical and useful for their life change?
Well, I will share a little information about my family history of Alzheimer's and cancer. So my father died of Alzheimer's. He had prostate cancer, and my mother died of glioblastoma brain cancer.
Wow.
And so that is what really kind of initiated my interest in both of those. I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want that to happen to my wife, my wife's family. Same kind of issues, dementia and cancers. And I don't want that. And so I started researching that to keep that from happening in our lives. And so now I'm going to share that with my clients.
And so this was a concern because there is a connection from inherited genes to some of these cancers, right?
Yes.
In fact, there's a whole prevailing theory, which is about the genetic origins of cancer. And I take some issue with it, even though there are some statistical
You
relationships.
use the word prevailing.
Right.
Do we challenge that?
It's the predominant paradigm that's out there today is that cancer is a genomic defect disease, and what most of the pharmaceutical companies have been doing have been pursuing drugs that try to solve that particular genetic defect.
Should we ask Keith the big 800-pound gorilla question in the room about, Keith, what is the relationship to cancer and metabolic things.
Right, and so
You said the M word.
I did.
So
I was going to bring it out right away.
So we do have the genomic aspect, but even whenever genomics was first coming out, matter of fact, the first test I had, genomic test on myself, was 20-something years ago.
Wow.
And I paid $1,500, and it's like 15 SNPs.
Wow.
And, and it's very expensive. And I learned some things about actually why I have an increased risk. That means it's going to happen. Increased risk indirectly, and they're not like cancer markers, but why I am at a higher risk. So I can start making changes to decrease that risk. And now, we see that it's, and even at that time, even researchers were saying it's 99% of our environment that allows the genomics to express. It's called epigenetics or genomics. And so it's just our environment that allows that to express.
So that can actually be a triggering thing for something that has been back there recessive, and it really isn't showing up, but then somebody through lifestyle, diet, exposure to environment, toxic things?
Exactly. So maybe a person has a genomic tendency to have high inflammation markers, IL-6 and such, and that does exist. Well, there are, food and supplement and lifestyle things you can do to reduce those IL-6 levels. IL-6 stimulates cancer cells. We talk about sugar kind of feeding or allowing, providing energy for cancer. But that inflammation can, do that, and even Alzheimer's. So, matter of fact, those two things are they're essentially the same treatment.
So you're talking. So is this a glucose respiration based?
Right.
But it's the difference between fermentation based energy production and aerobic oxygen based energy production.
Yes, but also it's some of that source of the problem is vascular.
Okay, so help us understand that.
Yeah, for cancer and Alzheimer's. So if your glucose is elevated, that glucose is going to damage the blood vessels, the lining of the blood vessels. If that is damaged, now we start getting atherosclerosis, plaque buildup, and now the blood vessels getting smaller, and the cells around it aren't going to be functioning right.
Well, because they're hypoxic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Low oxygen, low nutrients, and now there is a little bit of divergence here, so, about what happens, in cancer and in Alzheimer's, but Alzheimer's is also called diabetes type 3. So there's a vascular, not only a vascular, but a metabolic, blood glucose, issue, and then cancer, it starts to kind of really becoming more resistant to treatment whenever the oxygen levels, decrease. The body's a little bit, the smidgen more acidic, then the cancer cells actually go into a different grow and survival mode. It's kind of like when we exercise, our muscles build up due to the stress.
Right.
When tumor cells get stressed, they adapt and have a tendency to proliferate and grow and metastasize and spread, and so that blood supply is very important.
Keith, is there something that you utilize as a diagnostic when someone comes and sits with you? Either they say, I've got a history of Alzheimer and cancer in my family. What's the first thing you do to help them know? Sure, they could just believe you because you have a great reputation, but what are some of the diagnostic tools that you use for individuals to help you dial in to what they need to do? So
I do a nutrition physical. I look at hair, skin, nails, saliva, pH, zinc, taste test. I look at their blood tests from a different standpoint, not just if they're normal, but what about those minerals? Are they high or low normal? Kidney function. If the kidneys are lower functioning, why? Maybe their blood supply is being inhibited. So there's early markers in standard blood tests, even in the normal range, that can be indicators that can show, issues, for example, like that. We do genomic testing, and to look at that to get an idea about what supplements and lifestyle and food type things to help out with those type things too. So we, there's some other tests that actually usually allow more like the doctors and practitioners to do that.
Okay.
And like I'm not going to diagnose that you have Alzheimer's. There's going to be
so
other tests.
You can't do the diagnostic.
Right. I don't do the diagnostic part, but I'm going to help you with the nutrition and lifestyle and supplement part.
So compared to the 15 snippet test that was $1,500 20 years ago,
right.
Tell people a price range of these tests and the sophistication of them these days. What are they going to learn?
Yeah, so the newest test I do is called a 3x4, and I think there's probably 150 SNPs, in that, and it's $300.
And is that our friend Mary Jane?
Mary
The 3x4?
Exactly.
Yes, okay.
Exactly.
That's a great test.
Yeah,
Very
so
good,
I've known
very
Mary
good.
Jane for many
Right,
years.
right. Okay.
So let's go back to kind of the origins of cancer, because I think we started talking about the genomic side. My world, Keith, got turned upside down recently, for two reasons. One you know about. They found a melanoma in my arm during a routine dermatologist visit, and thank God they found it. It was not even stage 1; it was in situ, and I had a big chunk of flesh taken out. And there's no cancer in the margins or anywhere in the tissue. So, but thank God. But that diagnosis I remember the moment. It was like I got the phone call before the pathology report. I was like, my life was this, and then I get that report, and now it was my life was this. And so it really does focus you on what can we do? I mean, I know so many people that get a cancer diagnosis, they immediately get funneled to this oncology pipeline, right? And the oncologists say, don't trust anybody else, but just do the things I tell you to do. And that comes from their training, I think, because of the way they've had to learn how to do chemotherapy, and because of the prevailing paradigm.
What is the consensus out there?
The consensus amongst most of the oncologists is still that cancer is a genomic disease. It's a defect in the genome that's driving this cancer behavior. But the data isn't showing that currently. In fact, most of the genomic drugs that were supposed to be miracles for these cancers don't really work that well.
Right.
They maybe move the needle 3 to 5% in one direction, but for the majority of people, it's not the result. In fact, they've gone on to discover that you take a tumor and you look at all of the different defects in those cancer cells, you'll have a wide range of different defects expressing themselves in different parts of the tumor. Further, these guys did this amazing study. They took a cancer nucleus with all of its defective genome, transplanted it and put it into a healthy cytoplasm. They took a healthy nucleus and put it inside of a cancer cytoplasm. Guess what happened? The cancer nucleus in the healthy cytoplasm stayed healthy. It started to express healthy,
more normal
genomic interactions inside the cell. The healthy nucleus put into the cancerous cytoplasm turned into cancer. So this points to a very, it's one study. It was done in the context of one group of people. It hasn't been verified. But nonetheless, this points to the fact that there are what we call epigenetic factors that are being signaled from the cytoplasm that essentially are driving the cell to have this aberrant behavior.
Right. And it's not just one thing.
No.
Yeah, so it's not just one food or one exposure to something. It's a combination of things coming together that create the problem.
The biggest confluence I've seen is that 95+% of cancers, the mitochondria are either significantly, there I got the word in my head, significantly diminished, damaged, or not functioning, so that that cancer cell cannot generate energy by respiration. They are forced to generate energy by fermentation. So from that perspective, do you agree with that whole perspective? How do you integrate that? How do we approach then cancer from that perspective?
And so with that, and what I keep finding with research is looking over literally thousands of journals, is it's there is a metabolic issue, but it has to do with, what we're eating and how much.
Right.
And there's some other little, incidental things like exposures to a certain food ingredient that can literally, keep hitting those cells. Like if you keep eating French fries, most days, then those bad fats, are going to be oxidized and damaging, cells. And now they have to recover. Do you have enough other nutrients for that recovery process? I mean, there's definitely some things that we can be doing that can affect that.
So, and what you're saying is that there are a lot of environmental factors that probably lead up to somebody getting a cancer, right? Mm-hmm. I'm 99% sure that this thing on my left shoulder or left arm didn't happen in the absence of getting sun damage there, right, and other things going on, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think so. Is that what you're saying? It's not enough. I want to make sure I'm understanding Keith Bishop and your approach here, because I think it's important for our listeners. It's not enough just to say, okay, here's your cancer, here's the treatment. What you're saying is, you got a cancer because your metabolic process somewhere is out of balance, and we can address the cancer, but we first need to address these other metabolic conditions that are going on in your life.
Exactly. If you don't change what you were doing before the cancer, and then you go through just standard treatment, how can you expect different results after the treatment?
Wow.
So, if you have a metabolic issue, you go through the treatment and they say no evidence now, how can you expect it to not be an issue later if you still are eating those same things or
right,
doing those same things?
So it's like so if we imagine ourselves like a factory and a toxic spill occurs, and we go in and we clean up the toxic spill and we make sure that there's no more toxic chemicals anywhere. If we don't go in and examine how that toxic spill happened, guess what's probably going to happen again?
Exactly. Like the spaceship we were talking about just a moment ago.
Oh my gosh.
Blowing up. They learn from it. They expect it. They're going to learn from it. And
were there people on that?
No. No, they're going to make changes. And it was just an experimental. Matter of fact, they said there's 50% chance that it was going to happen. It did. But they will learn from it. And they will perfect it. So like there are other spaceships that they send up now, like at least one a week, with no problems, smaller versions.
So this is a big version.
This is the world's biggest ever spaceship.
So this is the one that's supposed to take people up into space,
like 50 people at a time, type of a thing, to Mars, type of thing.
Sorry, we have to do what was it called? A controlled
I'll say controlled, not disintegration, but controlled.
Deconstruction.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, passengers. We are now going to have to do a controlled deconstruction. Please grab the...
Hope everybody survives okay, and grab your flotation device. Oh, wait, we need one of those.
Grab your folded wings underneath your seat and flap. Right?
Yeah, you were 35 miles up. Hopefully that will work. So.
Yeah, there you go. Slight problem.
So, Keith, there's this. I was listening to a fascinating podcast a while back from a gentleman that worked at Sloan Kettering for many years. He worked there for about 6 years, and he actually is a acupuncturist and a naturopathic guy. And one of the things he said that really was riveting to me, and I'd love to hear you weigh in on this, he said, never do a conventional treatment for cancer that you are not willing to come alongside that with dietary changes and supplement and lifestyle changes. To do the one creates permanent harm to the immune system, but doing them both together, many people will make that choice, and then some people will make the choice based on the information given them by their practitioner to maybe just go the alternative way. Do you agree that if a person is going to be out there duking it out in the conventional medical world with the current, as Adam would say, the consensus, the prevailing paradigm, would you say it's a must for them to look forward to more longevity and quality of life by coming alongside with something you might propose?
Yes, that's one of the things I really specialize in, is looking at their treatment program, radiation, chemotherapy, surgery, whatever. There's research showing that eating certain ways and actually certain supplements, and some lifestyle activities can have a synergistic effect on their treatment program.
Wow. Synergistic meaning better outcome?
Oh, well, much better. Not just twice as good, but many times better results.
So I've heard this fact that if somebody goes to a ketogenic diet, it's essentially it's putting all of those cancer cells that only rely on sugars mostly for their energy into a very vulnerable state, and it's actually loading non-cancerous cells that have good respiration with a bunch of ATP from the ketosis, or how cells generate energy from ketosis. So it's actually it provides a buffer to the healthy cells for the assault, and it makes the cancer cells susceptible. Is that what you see?
Yes, but cancer cells adapt.
Oh, that's true. Okay. So help us understand.
Even, we typically hear this thing, cancer or sugar feeds cancer.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that simple. Sugar is an energy.
Don't say that to me.
It is an energy issue, and so yes, sugar will help cancer cells to grow if it's an entry chemical. If a person switches to a ketogenic diet, for a while it does seem to help, but they can adapt to even fats or ketone bodies for energy also. And so I go with more of a keto vegan vegetarian type thing. So I do allow some animal proteins, but not frequent. And I think I definitely do eat meat, but I'm careful about the quantity and recommend a limited quantity so that we can also get the foods that repair our body, the antioxidants and nutrients, and even a whole nother area. One of my favorite things I'm studying right now is lectins. Have a significant anti-cancer impact.
Well, this is a great segue, Keith. You've been listening to Keith Bishop, retired pharmacist, clinical nutritionist, that really, his lane has been Alzheimer's and now cancer for quite some time. Now, this is Ultra Life Today. You can find us anywhere where you like to find your podcasts. Please give us a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, help us beat the big tech algorithm. And we're going to be back in the next segment talking with Keith Bishop. We're going to keep moving down this metabolic road, nutrition road. We're also going to be talking about lectins, the L word. I knew you were going to bring that up as well. I'm Josh Bellew.
I'm Adam Payne, and this is Ultra Life Today. Our mission is to take nature's most beloved botanicals and enhance them with our liquid protein scaffold technology. This helps it reach your cells faster and better. With exponentially enhanced bioavailability, you'll feel better every day. Ultra Botanica, the feel-good curcumin.
Welcome back to our second segment with Keith Bishop. You're listening to Ultra Life Today. Keith Bishop, retired pharmacist, clinical nutritionist, decades now in private practice, works for an incredible group here in Oklahoma City called Flourish Compounding Pharmacy. But guess what? You want to get in contact with Keith? Prevail Over Cancer. What a awesome name for a blog, Keith. And I know you've been spending a lot of your spare time poring over clinical research, trying to really heighten your ability to target protocols that will help individuals that are dealing with Alzheimer's and cancer. And as you said in the last segment, the road or the journey to wellness is very similar with both of those things. We left off last segment with lectins. We were talking about the metabolic aspect and diet. Take us further down that road, Keith.
Sure. So my favorite thing actually for both Alzheimer's and cancer is leaning toward more of a ketogenic type diet, but also I call it time to eating or intermittent fasting, and only eating a certain number of hours a day, and making the body go into, as we were talking about earlier, burning ketones and fats for energy. It helps with both of those health issues, and trying to get a person to go into that is a challenge.
Now, Keith, I'm going to get into people's business here. Having recently gone on a ketogenic diet myself, talking to our good friend Kyle Drew, clinical nutritionist as well, and there is so much keto confusion out there, Keith. So when you talk about keto, let's define that for our viewers and listeners, because It's all over the map out there, and
Sure.
some people think they can just, as long as I'm eating keto proper foods, I can just eat anything, as much of these things as I want, and yet there's a therapeutic keto diet when you're talking about targeting cancers or Alzheimer. Help us understand macros and micros there and what people
Isn't
do.
it called the RKD, the restrictive ketogenic diet, or is there a terminology out there?
Yeah, there's many of them.
Many of them.
And,
Okay.
and explain what you
Well,
mean by that.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Keith, somebody's coming in. Their life is out of balance. They got a cancer. Go.
Okay, so we come in and we're going to talk about food. And so we're going to do time restricted or intermittent fasting.
Okay.
And try to get them to more of a eating only in an 8-hour window.
So what's the benefit of that? I mean, can't you just do a ketogenic diet and force the body to go in making ketone bodies? Why is the intermittent fasting a part of that?
Most people actually will need, unless they're a young person and physically active, they're going to need to do more of a fasting type situation to burn fat.
Okay.
So if we spread that out, this 3 meals and 3 snacks every day, the average person that has any type of body fat around their midsection is not going to go into a ketogenic type situation where they're burning fat or ketones for energy.
Why?
It just takes time, for the body to burn off those sugars that are sitting around, the blood sugars
in the gut.
in the body.
Wow.
Because the sugars are sitting around. I have people that they come in and their blood sugar, A1C, is perfectly fine. Maybe not ideal, but it's kind of like they have almost like a pre-diabetes. And then yesterday, the lady, her fasting blood glucose was almost 300.
What?
And because still in the morning. And so, she's not going to be burning fat.
Is she doing intermittent fasting?
No, she's not.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're starting some of those processes. And she's taking a prescription drug and looking at berberine, one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
And we will be spending
We
probably an
don't
entire
know
segment.
anything about
We
that.
will be spending an entire segment because, Keith, you know a lot about berberine. To your point, though, Keith, it's interesting. So when I went on the ketogenic, I'm restricting to 15 grams of carbs a day, between 15 and 20, but most of the time 15, 50 grams of protein. But intuitively, I just felt like, I need to eat dinner earlier. I need to maximize my opportunity to get some good restful sleep because I was feeling a bit more tired. And so I ended up with this unique thing where I kind of have about a 12 or 13 hour window where I'm not eating. Now, here's what's weird. I'm a slender guy, but I was carrying a little bit around here. In the first month on that, I'm doing my one belt
Right,
tight. It's like an inch disappeared in a month.
That's right.
It's crazy.
It does make a difference.
Good. That visceral fat is
Right.
can be problematic.
Okay, so back to your approach here and what you have started with an individual. And I know this is hard for people to hear. Is there any tips, or is it just going to be brutal? I will say this for me, Keith. It has actually been a major. I can set my mind to things pretty well, but as a slender guy with a high metabolism, the ketogenic thing has been a challenge for me. Is it for most people, or do a lot of people hit this sweet spot with intermittent fasting where all of a sudden their brain feels more active and the brain fog disappears and the energy levels come up? What happens normally?
It takes time, actually, through the day for that to happen. So at 12 hours, I'm to a point now where I can feel the difference. I'm switching from burning sugars or glucose for energy to I'm burning some fats. And actually, at that instant is, oh man, I'm hungry. I'm almost a little bit nauseous. And so the hypoglycemia type effect is starting to happen. And that lasts for about an hour.
Okay.
And so after that, I'm perfectly fine.
So you've crested the mountain, and now it's actually moving
So that first
most
part-
people toward a downhill.
So when you feel that hunger hit, that's the transition point. Is that it?
Exactly. For me, I believe it is. Yes.
So we need to look at that particular feeling as something that's very beneficial,
Exactly.
right? I mean, we can
that's
say, "Hey, I made
celebrate it." I'm in
Okay.
that. I'm starting
Nice.
to burn fat now. I'm hypoglycemic. I'm starting to burn fat, and then after about an hour, then it does change to where literally I can go after that. I can go a couple of days
Really?
without eating, and I'm not a big I
Right.
don't have a whole lot of
No,
body
you
fat
and
either.
I are very
Matter of fact, so my
similar.
goal is a 6-pack while I'm 66. So that's
I
so we'll see if it happens. So
So you're doing the workouts and stuff like
doing
that?
the workouts, intermittent fasting, and then this, definitely leaning toward a ketogenic diet, but not extremely strict. I'm trying to get the fruits and vegetables to repair my body. So
okay, so is it that will somebody go into a kind of a keto, a burning fat mode if they're just restricting it to the 8-hour intermittent fasting?
Some people will.
It depends on you're saying it depends on the glucose stores.
Yes.
And there is no one size fits all.
Exactly. Everybody's different.
So maybe I'm just suggesting something. Maybe somebody start with a ketogenic diet in order to shift to deplete those stores as much as possible, and then they can go to an intermittent fasting mode in order to, rather than having to. I'm trying to do the ketogenic diet, and I find it extremely difficult to stick to those foods. I can't eat eggs, and I can't eat shrimp, so I'm kind of like I'm limited to a bunch of stuff that like a lot of people would like to eat for a ketogenic diet. So. But what you're saying, I'm trying to absorb whether that would be a better paradigm for me personally, so I'm being a little selfish, to do the ketogenic as best I can for a couple of days to deplete the sugar stores and then go to an intermittent fasting model.
Sure, it would be an option. And I will do similar type things. I may be more restrictive, for one person, or I may realize that person doesn't or won't or can't do that type of thing, and so I may have to say, okay, so we're just going to go 12 hours without eating, okay, instead of going the full 18.
Sure.
Or, let's go toward the ketogenic type diet, versus, and so everybody's different, and, so we have to adjust that.
Understood.
Can one of the major differences be, because I was listening to some really interesting doctors that are very much into the carnivore thing, but one of the things they said is look, you don't want to do keto in a therapeutic way. You don't want to do carnivore stuff to change your health. Let me tell you 3 quick things you can do. Eliminate all processed foods. Boom. And then eliminate all sugars. Boom. And then they said, eliminate seed oils, and if you'll just do those 3 things, which, as we know, canola oil is in everything. You just almost can't find anything without canola or soybean oil in it. But just those 3 things can actually begin to really change the trajectory of someone's health, can't they?
Sure. Hold on. Is there a canola mafia? I mean, what's going on?
It's a cartel out of it.
It's a cartel.
Yes, it's far beyond
There's
the mafia.
There's some other foods like that too.
Right.
Really?
Oh yes. There's another area that I'm going to be talking about in the future. I'm trying to make sure I have my T's crossed and my I's dotted, because there actually is a mafia type group in this food group. And
is it the dairy? No, you're not going to say.
Well, I'm going to be talking about that within a day or two, yes, but it's not that.
So,
there's
Keith,
another one.
Where can people go to get information about your blog and to connect with you? How do we do that?
So, social media and Facebook, it's Prevail Over Cancer. And then the website's prevailovercancer.com. And then my office is at flourishrx.com. So Flourish Pharmacy.
So they can sign up to get a consultation with you, or they can go to your Prevail Over Cancer and connect with you that way.
Exactly, yes. So there's many different ways on the sites to connect with
So
me.
how many subscribers do you have to your Prevail Over Cancer now? Is it
let's
growing?
see. Facebook is 54,000 or something like that.
Wow.
And then Instagram is over 16, almost 17,000 today.
Okay,
That's
Keith
phenomenal.
Bishop
Great job.
here in Oklahoma City, not a lightweight. You just heard those numbers. Now, we've got about 2.5 minutes left, Keith. I never got you to fully dial in with me on macros and micros as it relates to the ketogenic diet, because I want people to understand there's major benefit that can begin to happen very quickly when you begin to dial back the carbohydrates and also watch the protein numbers. What is your recommendation for people?
So I have what I call the palm rule.
Okay.
Okay. So at each of our 3 meals, and it can be in that 8-hour window. Okay. Is we need 1 palm of protein. It could be meat, would be one example.
Okay.
And then 2 palms of carbs. So it's 3 palms of food for a meal. So.
Okay, now quickly let people know, if you're talking carbs, what kind of carbs are you talking?
Well, and so actually, if If it's white, you probably shouldn't take a bite.
Okay, if it's white, don't take a bite. I like that. That's my new phrase.
Packaged foods and sugars and things like that. So no, it's more like fruits and vegetables.
And would you actually say, though, for an individual that's moving down a cancer road, and again, we're sticking to the carbohydrate question here, would you say that fruits really need to be very minimal? Because my understanding is that the sugars from fruits convert the exact same way in the body when an individual's dealing with these kinds of challenges.
Maybe not.
Not? Okay.
Okay.
Ooh, let's hear it.
So
this is great.
There's a lot of research showing that in watermelon, people that consume watermelon have a reduced risk of cancer.
What?
Wow.
Really?
Okay. Yes, really.
Okay. Hit your Whole Foods, Natural Grocers, and Sprouts people.
Watermelon
Make sure
diet.
it's organic. Make sure it's organic.
Palm rules, though. I have a download about that.
So
Okay,
go
so
back
what's-
to that.
so what-
So you
so what
said
is
the
the-
palm, one protein.
Yeah, one protein,
two carbs.
Two carbs.
And so you're looking at a combination of different types of fruits and vegetables. But
Right.
then do they avoid the vegetables that are oxalate heavy or lectin heavy?
If they need to.
If they need to. And why would a person need to avoid those?
But because some people have an issue with oxalates, maybe their body getting rid of that. It's a kidney genetic type thing. So it just depends. Not everybody's going to have problems with oxalates.
Okay.
Not everybody's
Good to know.
gonna-
And so oxalates meaning things like spinach and kale and
Yeah, matter of
stuff
fact,
like that.
major
What everybody
cancer
puts in their
Oh,
smoothie, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
so
You know.
how would I know? How would somebody know that they have a problem with oxalates?
By typically a kidney stone issue.
Oh.
But there's different types of kidney stones. So actually a doctor has to tell them that they have an issue.
Okay,
It's
so
a common thing I hear about on people saying, well, that food has oxalates.
No types of tests that
Interesting.
you can do in your profiling
No,
of that
he
to
can't.
help.
He can't,
Okay,
he
that's
can't
what I
do the
wanted to know.
diagnostic stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, he does a lot of diagnostic tests. He offers about 300 of
I
them.
do a lot of nutrition
Yes,
assessment,
yes.
type things.
Right,
So,
but not to the purpose of creating a diagnostic code for a treatment plan.
right, exactly. And so 3 palms of food for a meal, and then 1 palm for a snack. And it can be an
So
ideal.
my palm size?
It's bigger than mine, right?
Yeah.
Adam's is
You're a lot
huge.
bigger guy.
Right.
I want Adam's palm when I'm snacking.
He's got a lot more muscle. Okay, and so the little tiny 100-pound female, it's her palm. Exactly, it's her palm. 3
Okay.
palms of food.
You've been listening.
So 3
hold on.
palms for dinner.
3 palms for 3 meals.
Okay.
Okay, and then 1 palm up to 3 times a day, definitely for snacks.
Okay, but keep 2 organic fruits and vegetables.
Exactly.
Whole foods.
And some protein with those, but then protein, it doesn't have to be meat. So some of those 3 palm, it's a 3 palm for a meal. So if you want to have legumes, it's 2 palms of legumes, and then we still need 1 more palm of an ideal, not white, type food like vegetables or fruits.
Gotcha.
Okay, you've been listening to Keith Bishop, clinical nutritionist. His blog or website is Prevail Over Cancer. I think it's the easiest way to get in contact with him. You can reach out to him there. We're going to be back after this segment. I think we're going to wrap up a little bit more on the diet. We want to talk a little bit about berberine because even though Adam and I know enough to be dangerous, Adam really does, Keith has taken a real deep dive into berberine as a unique tool and supplement that's really helping individuals, not just in the Alzheimer's cancer space, but in other areas as well. So this is Ultra Life Today. I'm Josh Bellew.
I'm Adam Payne, and stay tuned.